Why did my best friend keep my biggest secret, then use it against me? It happened in less than 5 seconds, and yet it unraveled years of trust in front of dozens of watching eyes. Wait, guys, you know what she did last summer? No. Oh my god, okay, don't hate me for this, she giggled, drunk on vodka and attention, pausing long enough for the entire room to lean in. She cheated on her sates. Like, full on, paid someone to do the math section. Isn't that wild? Laughter exploded from the crowd. I heard someone say, no way, and another person shout, seriously. But I couldn't hear anything after that. My ears filled with a high-pitched ring, a sound I would later come to associate with betrayal. My limbs locked in place. My drink nearly slipped from my hand. She turned toward me then, beaming like she'd told a funny childhood story, not the most shameful secret I'd ever confided to anyone. I didn't speak. I didn't cry. I walked straight out of the house, the cool air biting at my cheeks, my heart pulsing so hard I thought it would bruise my ribs. It was her, the one person I had always believed would protect me from the world. And now, she had become the very thing I needed protection from. Back then, she wasn't just my best friend. She was my person. If something good happened, I told her first. If something terrible happened, she'd show up at my doorstep with tea and a playlist. When my parents fought so loud the neighbors heard, she'd sneak me out the back and we'd sit under the stars pretending we were anywhere else. I didn't just love her. I trusted her with my whole, unguarded, sometimes reckless heart. And that night, she broke it so casually, so publicly, that it made me wonder whether she'd ever been my friend at all. But this story doesn't start there. To understand how I got to that night, to that betrayal, we have to go back. To the halls of middle school. To the beginning of us. Because betrayal doesn't fall from the sky. It grows, quietly, in the soil of something that once felt like home. We met in 7th grade, in the fluorescent hum of the school library. Both of us reaching for the same copy of The Outsiders. Her fingers touched mine and we both laughed awkwardly. She offered the book to me, even though I could tell she wanted it too. That was the first clue she was the kind of person who gave things up before anyone asked. Her name was Sam, short for Samantha, but she hated that name, said it sounded like a judge or a math teacher. I liked that about her, how she rewrote her identity with sharp, funny edges. We clicked instantly. Within a week, we were attached at the hip, walking home together, swapping lunches, finishing each other's homework when one of us got stuck. She wasn't just funny, she was magnetic. People naturally gravitated toward her. But for reasons I still don't fully understand, she kept pulling me into her orbit. I was quieter, more cautious. Where she cracked jokes in class, I sat taking notes. Where she wore mismatched socks and neon nail polish, I wore navy sweaters and pressed jeans. We were different, but we made each other bigger somehow. I gave her focus, she gave me courage. We shared everything, secrets whispered under covers at sleepovers. Boys we liked, teachers we hated, fears about growing up. She once cried on my bedroom floor after her mom forgot her birthday. I once told her I sometimes felt invisible even when people looked straight at me. It became routine, reality happened, and then we unpacked it together. By 8th grade, we had our own language, inside jokes, facial expressions that conveyed entire conversations. If someone messed with her, they messed with me. When I got pushed into a locker by a boy showing off, she shoved him back and told him, deadpan, "You touch her again and I'll report you for being emotionally stunted." We were a unit. Teachers knew it. Our classmates rolled their eyes at it. And to be honest, I think we took comfort in that identity, in being each other's constant, even when high school started and the world felt like it was tilting beneath our feet. New lockers, harder classes, 1,000 unfamiliar faces. We clung to each other. We'd meet under the big oak tree by the tennis courts every lunch, even when it rained. She once held her binder over my head like an umbrella while I ranted about failing a quiz. I laughed at how soaked she got. She shrugged. It's just water. But over time, I started noticing small changes. She began borrowing things from me. At first, it was a hoodie or a hair clip. Then it became phrases I used, songs I loved, even the way I talk. I remember the first time she used one of my stories in conversation like it was hers. I felt a tiny sting like a paper cut. But I let it go. She was my best friend. What was mine was hers. Then came the boys. It started innocently. Who do you think is cuter, Ryan or Leo? And we'd giggle and debate. But more than once I'd tell her I liked someone, and suddenly, she'd be sitting beside him in class, laughing at his jokes, touching his arm. Again, I brushed it off. Maybe I was just insecure. Maybe I was imagining things. After all, Sam was magnetic. People wanted to be near her. I couldn't fault her for that. But deep down, a seed was planted. A quiet, unsettled feeling. A shift I couldn't name yet. Still, I loved her. I defended her. And most of all, I needed her. Because high school was loud and messy and terrifying. And she was the only person who made it feel manageable. So when I noticed that sometimes she looked at my life like it was something she was auditioning for, I told myself it was normal. That maybe this is what best friends do. overlap, mirror each other. What I didn't realize then was that she wasn't just mirroring me, she was keeping score. It was the summer before our senior year when I first felt it. Like really felt it? That creeping sense that Sam was no longer content just being close to me. She wanted everything I had, not just my interests or my jokes or my favorite indie band. She wanted my space, my light, my people. At first, it was subtle. She started dressing like me, not in an obvious copycat kind of way, but little things. The denim jacket with the iron-on patches I'd had since freshman year. A week after I wore it to school, she showed up with a near-identical version. The turquoise eyeliner I used once for a concert. She bought it the next day and wore it constantly. Even my speech patterns, phrases I thought were uniquely mine, started echoing in her voice during group hangouts. I told myself imitation was flattery, that it didn't mean anything. But then came Caleb. I'd liked Caleb since 10th grade. He was quiet in class, wore glasses that were always slipping down his nose, and drew dragons in the margins of his notebook. We never really talked until junior year when we got paired for a chemistry project. One afternoon in the library, while we were balancing equations and trying not to laugh too loud, he told me he liked the way I tapped my pencil when I was thinking. My stomach did that flutter thing. I told Sam that night. She grinned and said, "He's totally into you. You guys are gonna be nerdy soulmates." But something flickered in her eyes. A hesitation. I noticed it, but I let it go. Why wouldn't she be happy for me? A few weeks later, we were at a mutual friend's birthday picnic. It was a laid-back thing. Blankets in the park, lemonade, someone playing guitar badly. I was mid-conversation with someone when I noticed Sam and Caleb sitting together on a separate blanket. She was laughing at something he said, leaning in closer than necessary. Her hand brushed his arm once, then again, and then she tossed her hair the way she did when she knew people were watching. I stood there, watching them, a weird knot forming in my throat. Later, when I asked her about it, she shrugged. "What? We were just talking. You're being weird." But I wasn't being weird. I saw it again and again, at lunch, during group study sessions. Even online, she started tagging him in memes, replying to his stories with fire emojis. And he responded. He started sitting with us more, but he always talked to her first. Still, I didn't say anything. I didn't want to be the jealous friend, the insecure one. I told myself that maybe I was reading too much into it. Maybe Caleb just liked her energy, but I started pulling away. Just a little? Enough to breathe. Enough to watch her from a distance and wonder what she really wanted. And that's when she turned sweeter. Kinder. Like she could sense I was slipping, and she needed to reel me back in. "Let's do a girls-only night," she said one Friday. Just us. Like old times. We watched movies, made popcorn, painted our nails. It felt real again. Comfortable. I told her about a fight I'd had with my mom and she listened without interrupting. She even rubbed my shoulders when I cried. And just like that I trusted her again. So when she asked, "Hey, is there anything you've never told me? Like, anything you're scared to say out loud?" I didn't hesitate. I told her about how I panicked before the SATs. About how my dad had lost his job and my mom was pressuring me to apply for scholarships. About how I couldn't afford to fail, and I'd made a terrible, stupid choice. I paid someone online to take the math section for me. It was anonymous, risky, and I hated myself for it every day since. I expected her to judge me, but she didn't. She just heavy and pulled me into a hug. "Your secret's safe with me, okay? Forever?" I believed her. Because even after everything, the copying, the flirting, the weird moments, I still saw her as my best friend. I didn't know then that what I gave her that night wasn't trust. It was ammunition. The next time it happened, Sam getting close to someone I liked, I tried to ignore it. But this time it wasn't just someone I liked. It was someone who actually liked me back. His name was Daniel. We met during a group volunteering project that fall, assigned to the same team for organizing supplies at a community center. He was different from Caleb, more outgoing, quick with a compliment, and thoughtful in subtle ways. He remembered what kind of tea I liked. He waited for me after meetings just to walk me to my car. It was obvious he liked me. And I liked him, too. Sam knew. Of course she did. I told her after the second time Daniel texted me just to ask how my day was. She smiled and said, "Seems sweet," then added, "You two would be cute together." It felt genuine. So when she asked if she could come to the next volunteer meet-up, just to help out, "I'm bored this weekend," I didn't think twice, but from the moment she arrived, I felt it. That shift. She wore lip gloss I'd never seen her use before. She leaned against the wall like she was in a music video. When Daniel walked in, her face lit up. "Hey, you're the famous Daniel, right? I've heard so much about you." He laughed. She laughed louder. And I stood there, watching them banter like I was the extra in my own story. For the next hour, she hovered close to him, joking, teasing, looping him into tasks that didn't need two people. I tried to stay busy, folding clothes for the donation drive, but I could feel the heat behind my eyes. That burning sensation of humiliation, of being pushed into the background by the person who was supposed to be cheering me on. Later, when I brought it up, carefully, cautiously, she didn't get angry, she just sighed. God, you're always so sensitive, she said. I wasn't flirting. I was just being nice. Maybe if you weren't so uptight, he'd like you more. Her words hit like a slap. Cold, precise, and wrapped in that fake concern she had perfected. I didn't argue. I didn't say anything at all. I just went home and cried so quietly that even my dog didn't stir. But something shifted in me that night. I started keeping my cards closer. I stopped sharing every crush, every insecurity. I started holding parts of myself back. Not just from her, but from everyone. And yet I still clung to off habit, out of history, out of hope. Then came the party, the one where everything fell apart. It was a Saturday in late spring, right before finals. Sam had been talking about her birthday for weeks. She wanted to throw a massive party, drinks, music, the works. Her parents were out of town, and she was buzzing with excitement. You have to come, she said. I'll kill you if you don't. I agreed, even though I felt uneasy. We hadn't been close lately. Texts had turned short and sporadic. Her social media was full of photos with new people. People I didn't know, inside jokes I wasn't a part of. But she was still my best friend. Or at least, I still wanted her to be. I showed up late, wearing the navy dress she'd once said brought out my eyes. The house was packed. Music thumped through the floor. People milled about with red Solo cups, shouting over the bass. I searched for her and found her in the kitchen, laughing with a group of girls I didn't recognize. She looked over and smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Look who decided to show up, she said. Miss Sat, top scorer herself. I laughed, awkwardly not sure what she meant. Then she said it. The thing that would end us? Hey, everyone, she called out. Did you know this girl cheated on her sates? Swear to God, paid someone online. It's like genius, level shady. People turned, laughed, someone clapped. I felt my chest tighten, my throat close. She looked at me, waiting for my reaction. And I realized it wasn't an accident. It wasn't a slip. It was a performance, and I was the punchline. I left without a word. Without finishing my drink, without looking back. The sound of her voice telling my secret would echo in my mind for weeks. Like a bell I couldn't unring. I didn't cry until I got home. Not on the walk down her street, not in the car with my knuckles white on the steering wheel, not even when I slammed the front door shut behind me. I went straight to my room, kicked off my shoes, and sat on the floor with my back against the bed, staring at nothing for what felt like hours. And then, it all hit me. The embarrassment, the betrayal, the burning shame of having my worst decision thrown like raw meat into a pit of strangers. I sobbed silent, heaving sobs that left my chest aching and my eyes swollen. I buried my face in a pillow and screamed until my throat was raw. The next morning, my phone had 4 texts from her. Sam, hi, sorry about last night. Hope you're not mad, lol, Sam. It was just a joke. Chill, you're fine, Sam. Or are you really gonna be upset about that? Sam? God? Whatever? I didn't reply. I didn't go to school the next day. I told my mom I was sick, and maybe I was. Sick with humiliation, with anger, with the sting of trusting someone who never deserved it. But worse than the betrayal was the memory of the moment I told her. The night we sat on her bedroom floor, our legs tangled in a blanket, and I whispered the secret I swore I'd never say out loud. How she had looked at me, eyes soft and serious, and promised, "It's safe with me. You don't ever have to worry." I kept thinking, why? Why would she use that against me? That question spun in my head for days. I isolated myself, avoided everyone. I ignored texts, skipped club meetings, turned down invites to hang out. I walked through school like a ghost. Whispers trailed me, just like at the party. People looked, but no one asked. No one defended me. Sam didn't reach out again, not for a week. Then, one evening I got another message. Sam, are we seriously not talking? After everything? It was like she had flipped a switch, from cruel to confused, from instigator to victim. I didn't know how to respond, or if I even should, so I didn't. Instead, I sat down and opened a blank note on my phone. I started typing everything I wanted to say, not to send, but just to get it out. You betrayed me. You humiliated me. And for what? A laugh? A moment of attention. I thought you were my sister. I wrote it all, every word I couldn't say out loud, and then I deleted it. The truth was, I didn't want to talk to her. I didn't want to hear excuses or see her roll her eyes and tell me I was being dramatic. I just wanted it to not hurt anymore. But healing isn't that simple. Grief doesn't disappear just because you understand where it came from. And there was grief. Deep, aching grief. For a friendship I thought would last forever. For a version of Sam that no longer existed. Maybe had never existed. I replayed our entire friendship like a film reel, scene by scene, trying to pinpoint where it had started to unravel. Had it been when I told her about Caleb? When I got the part in the school play she wanted? When Daniel picked me instead of her? Or had it always been there? This quiet resentment, tucked behind her laughter. I remembered little moments now that felt different in hindsight, her jokes that carried a bite, the way she'd sometimes interrupt me, then claim I was too quiet to notice, the times she made me feel small and then brushed it off like it was nothing. But this wasn't nothing. This was a decision, a deliberate choice to take something fragile and secret and stomp on it in front of an audience. And the worst part, I had given it to her. In the days that followed, I stayed off social media, my appetite vanished, I avoided hallways where I might run into her, ducked out of classrooms early, skipped lunch. I felt like a hollow version of myself, quiet, brittle, on the edge of disappearing. But underneath all that pain, something else was growing, anger, not just at her, but at myself. For ignoring the signs, for making excuses, for allowing her to carry so much of my identity, and that anger, quiet and slow, began to feel like strength. The days blurred into weeks, and the silence between us stretched into something brittle and permanent. I didn't tell anyone what really happened. Not my mom, not Daniel, not the few friends who messaged to ask if I was okay. I just said I was tired, busy, studying hard for finals. In truth, I was unraveling. My stomach clenched every time I passed a group of students whispering. My hands trembled during tests. I couldn't look teachers in the eye. I was sure they knew. That everyone knew. Even if they didn't, the shame clung to me like static. I walked through the world afraid someone would ask, "Did you really cheat?" And what would I say? That I was desperate, that I made a mistake and confided in someone who used it as ammunition? I missed the version of myself I'd been before, the girl who trusted easily, who laughed without checking who was around. That girl was gone. But the hardest part wasn't the isolation. It wasn't the whispers or the anxiety. It was the moments when I missed her, because even after everything, my mind still reached for her. I'd hear a new song and instinctively think, Sam would love this. I'd pass a coffee shop and remember the time we sat there for hours, pretending to study while gossiping about our classmates. Memory is cruel like that. It doesn't filter out the good just because someone hurt you. I kept waiting for something to shift, for her to show up at my door, for an apology that never came. Instead, she posted photos of new parties, new inside jokes. In one, she was laughing with a girl I vaguely recognized from Spanish class. The caption read, "Real ones only." I stared at it for a long time, my chest tight. It wasn't just that she'd hurt me, it was that she didn't seem to care. And slowly, that realization began to replace my sadness with something else. Clarity. The truth was Sam hadn't been my best friend for a long time. She'd been someone who needed me to be smaller, so she could feel big, someone who fed on my secrets, my loyalty, my kindness, and gave back just enough to keep me believing we were stills. And now that I had nothing left to offer, no secrets to steal, no crushes to flirt with, no light for her to reflect, she moved on. I wish I could say I rose from that realization like a phoenix, strong and sure, but I didn't. I stumbled. I questioned everything. My other friendships. Was I too trusting? Too needy? Had I made her this way by never pushing back? Therapy helped. Eventually, I started going once a week, sitting in a gray, walled room with a soft-spoken counselor who asked questions no one else dared. "What did you learn from that friendship?" she asked one day. I stared at the ceiling for a long time before answering. "That I want someone who chooses me without conditions," I said. "Not just when it's convenient, not just when I'm quiet and useful." It was a small thing, but it felt big. I started journaling, not about her but about me, the things I liked, the things I wanted, the parts of myself I'd shoved aside to make space for someone else's shadow. I began rebuilding, not dramatically but in quiet ways. I joined a book club, applied for a summer internship, started having lunch with a girl from my history class who smiled like she meant it. And through it all, I didn't hear from Sam, not once, no apology, no explanation, just absence. But sometimes, silence is its own kind of answer. It was almost poetic in a twisted way. The party where she broke me, that had been the stage, the performance. But what followed was more insidious, months of little wounds dressed up as accidents. Quiet barbs that only I could hear. Smiles that didn't reach her eyes. A public friendship dressed in pastel filters, with rot just beneath the surface. When Sam invited me to her birthday party, part of me knew something was wrong. She hadn't really spoken to me in weeks. Our last real conversation had been stilted, full of pauses and forced laughter. And yet, out of nowhere, she texted, "Party at mine next Friday. It wouldn't be the same without you." It felt performative. Too sugary. Like someone inviting their old friend for the sake of appearances. I stared at the message for a long time, thumbs hovering over the screen. I could have ignored it, could have deleted it and kept the distance intact. But I didn't. Maybe it was a test. Maybe I wanted to believe she was sorry, that this was her way of extending an olive branch. Maybe I was still holding on to the girl I met in 7th grade, the one who gave up her book so I could have it. So I replied, "I'll be there," and I was. The night of her party, I got ready with shaking hands. I chose a soft gray sweater dress, not too flashy, not invisible either, and braided my hair the way Sam used to compliment. I stared at myself in the mirror and whispered, "You can leave anytime you want." The house was already packed when I arrived. Laughter spilled from the windows, the front door was open, music pulsed like a heartbeat. Inside, people I vaguely recognized mingled with faces I didn't know. I smiled at a few acquaintances, kept my distance, and scanned the room for her. She was in the kitchen, of course, center stage, surrounded by a circle of curated friends. When she spotted me, her eyes lit up with something that wasn't joy. "Look who finally showed up," she called. Heads turned, she walked over, hugged me with one arm, then added, "You clean up nice. Not bad for a traitor?" I blinked. She laughed. "I'm kidding, chill." A few people chuckled, unsure. I smiled weakly, heart already sinking. "Happy birthday," I said, handing her the small gift I'd picked out. An enamel pin shaped like a lightning bolt, a nod to our old inside joke about being storm sisters. She took it without looking. "Cool." I drifted through the party like a ghost. Conversation swirled around me. Laughter rang too loudly. I stood in a corner sipping lukewarm soda, trying not to wonder why I'd come. And then, sometime after midnight, it happened. Someone asked her about college applications. She groaned dramatically and said, "Don't even get me started. I'm not a genius like her," and pointed at me. People turned. I smiled, awkwardly. "She's got it all figured out. She even figured out how to cheat the system, right?" The room quieted. Sam laughed. "Kidding, kidding. Or am I?" And that's when she did it. She told them, word for word, detail by detail, my secret. The one I'd sworn never to share. The one she'd promised to protect. She told them about the fake ID used to register the test taker. About the VPN I used. About the guilt I confessed afterward. And she did it with a grin. People laughed, gasped. Someone muttered, "No way." Another said, "That's actually kind of smart." I couldn't breathe. It wasn't just the words, it was the tone. Casual, cruel, delivered with the ease of someone telling a funny anecdote, not dismantling the person who trusted her most. I locked eyes with her. She smiled, tight-lipped, satisfied, and I knew this wasn't just a mistake. This was payback. For something I didn't understand. For feelings she'd never admitted. For a bitterness she'd swallowed for years. I left before the laughter faded. I walked through the front door, down the street, and didn't stop until I was in my car with the engine running and my hands shaking. That night, I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't hurt, but because something colder had settled in. Clarity. There would be no coming back from this. It was the silence that followed that hurt the most. The kind of silence that doesn't just fill space, it invades it. A week passed, then two. No texts, no apologies, no messages that began with, "I didn't mean to," or "I got carried away," or even just, "Are you okay?" Sam didn't reach out. Instead, she posted photos from the party, her with her arm slung around someone I'd never met, laughing so wide it didn't look real. Captions full of inside jokes and hashtags. I stopped looking after the third post. The school hallways didn't feel safe anymore. I walked with my head down, afraid to meet the eyes of people who had heard my secret delivered like a punchline. I could tell who knew by how they looked at me, either too much or not at all. I spent lunches in the library, headphones in but no music playing, just pretending to listen to something so no one would talk to me. Even the air around me felt different, like it had thinned. My grades started to slip. Not drastically, but enough to worry my teachers. One of them pulled me aside after class and asked if everything was okay at home. I smiled and said I was fine. It was easier than explaining that the girl who used to be my home had turned into a stranger. I thought maybe I could move on without confrontation. That the storm would pass, and eventually things would settle, but then 3 weeks after the party I got a text that made everything worse. It was from an unknown number. Unknown. "Hey. Sorry about what happened. You didn't deserve that." Attached was a screenshot. Someone had posted a meme on a private story I wasn't part of. It was a photo of a person sitting behind a laptop, covered in math equations, with the SIPREP. More like a SAID hack. Below it, Sam had commented, "Iconic behavior." It hit me like a second betrayal. Not only had she told the story, she'd kept the narrative alive, milked it for likes, turned it into content. I felt something snap. That night I opened our old text thread. Message. Whatever. Still unread, and I began typing. "Why did you do it?" Simple. Direct. I waited. I watched the screen. Nothing. I put my phone down. An hour later. Sam's. I don't know. Not sorry. Not defensive. Just 3 words that felt too empty, too late. I didn't reply. But the next morning something else happened. She sent another message. Accidentally. It was clearly meant for someone else. "Sam," she finally texted me. "I feel like I should say something but IK." The message hung on my screen like a bruise. Fresh and ugly, and then, another one. This time I could tell she realized her mistake. "Sam, ignore that." I didn't. I read it again, and again, and again. I thought about how long I had known her, How many nights I'd spent comforting her, defending her, excusing her, a problem she might have to acknowledge. My phone buzzed one last time that night. Sam, okay. Look, I was mad, you were pulling away. I felt like you were judging me and I just snapped. It wasn't planned, it just came out. It just came out. Like cruelty is an accident. Like betrayal is a sneeze. I stared at the message for a long time, and then I did something I never thought I'd do. I deleted her number. I didn't block her. I didn't send a final monologue. I just quietly erased her from my contacts, closed the text thread, and placed my phone face down on the desk. And in that small act, I felt something inside me begin to unclench. The days after her accidental confession were oddly still. No more texts, no more screenshots, no attempts to reach out. She vanished from my inbox as suddenly as she had flooded it. At school, we passed each other in the halls like strangers. Sometimes she'd glance my way, sometimes I'd catch her whispering to someone, and my name would hang like static in the air, but neither of us spoke. It was like our friendship had been a long-running play and the curtain had finally closed. Without applause, but in that silence, something began to change inside me. The more distance I put between us, the clearer everything became. Not just the pain she'd caused, but the slow erosion that had led to it. Our friendship hadn't been healthy for a long time. It had been a tightrope stretched thin by quiet resentments and masked competition, and I had walked that rope blindly thinking I was standing on solid ground. Now, with it snapped beneath me, I had to learn to walk on my own. It wasn't easy. Some days I woke up and felt fine, like maybe I'd finally moved on. Other days, a photo or song or hallway laugh would knock the breath out of me. I'd find myself replaying our old memories like a film reel stuck on loop. The time we stayed up all night before finals, quizzing each other with flashcards and eating spoonfuls of peanut butter from the jar. The way we used to harmonize to old pop songs, inventing new lyrics for fun. The notes we passed in class, folded into tiny squares like secrets. Those were real moments. But real doesn't always mean good, and love doesn't always mean safe. Slowly, I started to piece myself back together. It began with small things. I deleted our photos from my phone, not all at once, but over time, I stopped checking her social media. I left the group chat we used to share and muted mutual friends who still tagged her in things. I made room. And in that room, other people stepped in. Daniel, for one. We never became something romantic, not after everything, but he did something better. He listened. I told him what happened, every painful detail, and he didn't flinch. He didn't judge, he just sat beside me, quiet and steady. That wasn't your fault, he said once, when I admitted I still blamed myself for trusting her. You were kind, that's not a weakness. It took me a while to believe him, but eventually I started to. The panic attacks stopped. I returned to the lunchroom. I started laughing again, not the hollow kind I'd been using to get by, but real stomach-deep laughter that surprised me when it came. And one day, months later, I saw her again. It was at the grocery store, of all places. I was in the snack aisle, debating between two brands of crackers, when I looked up and saw her at the end of the aisle, holding a bottle of soda. Our eyes met, neither of us smiled, neither of us moved. It was a second, maybe less, but it felt like standing on the edge of something that used to be a mountain and realizing it had crumbled into a hill. She looked away first, turned down the next aisle and disappeared. I stood there for a moment, heart beating quietly, and then chose my crackers and walked on. I didn't feel angry, or scared, or small. I just felt done. And that, more than anything else, told me I was healing, because some stories don't need a confrontation, some endings don't come with closure or a perfect goodbye, sometimes they just stop. And you begin again. Months slipped by, and the weather changed like it was trying to match the shifts inside me. Fall gave way to winter. The leaves turned brittle and blew away, and so did what remained of my guilt. The weight I'd been dragging behind me, shaped like a girl with a crooked smile and a gift for cruelty, grew lighter with each sunrise. But healing, I learned, wasn't linear. Some days I'd feel whole, grounded, even free. Then something would knock me off balance, a comment in the hallway, a familiar scent, the sound of laughter that reminded me of a joke we once shared. And sometimes I'd misheard. That was the part no one warned me about. You don't just grieve what someone did to you. You grieve the person you thought they were. You mourn the imagined future, birthdays spent together, college visits, maybe even weddings down the line. I had planned my life with Sam in it. Her absence wasn't just an emotional gap, it was logistical, practical, real. But each day, I got better at building without her. One Thursday afternoon in February, I was cleaning out a drawer when I found it. An old letter she had written me the summer before junior year, on pale blue stationery with little lightning bolts printed in the corners. To my storm sister, it began. I almost threw it away. Instead, I read it. She had written about how much I meant to her. How she didn't feel like herself unless we'd talked that day. How she admired the way I always seemed to know what to say, even when she was spiraling. You're the lighthouse, she wrote. Even when I try to drown myself in chaos, you're always there. I folded the letter carefully and placed it back in the drawer. Because here's the thing, I had been her lighthouse. But lighthouses don't follow ships. They stand still, they shine, and if someone sails away from that light, that's their choice. A few weeks later, I received a message request on social media. From her, my breath caught as I opened it. There was no, "Hey? No, how have you been?" Just a photo. It was of us. From sophomore year, standing under a streetlight drenched from the rain, laughing like the world couldn't touch us. Beneath it, one sentence. "Sam, I don't know how to say sorry the right way." I stared at the screen for a long time. I didn't reply. Not right away. I went for a walk. I made tea. I called someone else. Someone who had become a better friend, quietly and consistently, without ever needing to steal my spotlight. Then, finally, I returned to the message. I typed 3 words. "I don't either," and hit send. Not because I forgave her, but because I needed her to know that I wasn't angry anymore. I was just tired. That message was the last we exchanged for a long time. We both went on living, on growing. Her name faded from conversations. My story moved forward, and I stopped waiting for hers to circle back. But I'll admit it, sometimes, even years later, I'd wonder, did she ever think of me? Did she ever really regret it? Turns out, she did. The letter came nearly 3 years later, long after I thought her chapter in my life had closed. It arrived on a rainy Wednesday in early spring. I found it wedged between a pizza flyer and a credit card offer in my mailbox. No return address, just my name written in uneven, slanted cursive that tugged something in my memory. I knew before I opened it. The envelope was soft, cream-colored, the kind that usually holds wedding invitations or thank-you notes. Inside, a single page folded in thirds, the edges slightly frayed like it had been carried around for a while before being sent. I sat down on the floor of my tiny apartment and unfolded it slowly. Hi. If you're reading this, it means I finally got the courage to write it. It's taken me a long time to even try. Her handwriting hadn't changed. Still looping in some places, sharp in others. I don't expect anything from this letter. No response, no forgiveness. But I needed to say this. To say everything I didn't say then. I held my breath and kept reading. What I did was wrong. Not impulsive. Not misunderstood. Just cruel. I weaponized your trust because I couldn't handle my own feelings. I was jealous of your calm, your focus, the way people looked at you and listened. I felt invisible next to you, and instead of telling you that, I lashed out, like a child, like a coward. My hands trembled slightly. The rain ticked softly against the windows. I told myself for a long time that it was a joke gone too far. That I didn't mean to hurt you. But that's not true. I did want to hurt you. Because I thought if I made you smaller, I could feel bigger. That sentence hit like a weight to the chest. It was raw, brutal, honest. I see now how much damage I caused, not just to you but to myself. You were the best friend I ever had, and I ruined it. You didn't deserve that. You didn't deserve me. I miss you. All the time. But more than that, I wish I had been better for you. I wish I had loved you the way you loved me, freely, without fear or competition. I paused, wiped at my cheek. I hadn't realized I was crying. You don't need to reply. You owe me nothing. But I wanted you to know that I remember everything. The good parts, especially. I hope you're happy now. I hope you found better friends. Ones who protect you like I should have. Ones who never turn your light into a target. I'm sorry, Sam. I folded the letter slowly, reverently. It felt like the final page of a story I hadn't known needed an epilogue. I didn't reply. I didn't need to, because sometimes closure doesn't come from confrontation. It comes from knowing someone finally saw the damage, finally looked in the mirror, finally said the thing that mattered. I kept the letter, not out of sentiment but as a reminder people can change. They can regret, but some wounds heal best when left untouched, acknowledged but not reopened. That night I sat by the window and thought about all the versions of us. The middle school girls trading secrets. The teenagers navigating heartbreak. The near adults who stood on either side of a moment that changed everything. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel sad. I just felt still. It's strange. The moment you realize you've outgrown a ghost. After I read her letter, I expected some kind of emotional avalanche. Grief, anger, nostalgia sharp enough to wound. But instead I felt quiet. Not numb, just still. I didn't tell anyone about the letter, not at first. It felt too personal, too sacred to dissect. It wasn't forgiveness she had asked for. It was acknowledgement, and she gave that freely, fully, without dressing it in excuses. In its own way, that was enough. Life by then had taken me in a different direction. College had opened up a world where no one knew my past, where I could introduce myself without dragging old shame behind me like a suitcase. I joined clubs, made new friends, friends who showed up when they said they would, friends who didn't flinch at my quirks or treat my vulnerabilities like leverage. One of them, Maya, became a kind of anchor. She never asked for more than I could give. She noticed when I got quiet. She didn't ask why unless I wanted to tell her. With her, I learned that friendship didn't have to be dramatic to be deep. One night, we were sitting in the common room, trading stories about old friends when she asked, "What happened to your best friend from high school?" And for the first time, I told the story out loud, not every sharp edge, just enough. "She broke my trust," I said softly, in a really public way, and she didn't apologize until years later. I nodded. "That's awful." I nodded. I added, "She wrote me a letter. That helped." I thought about it. "It didn't change the past," I said, "but it reminded me that I wasn't crazy, that I was hurt for a reason." Maya smiled. "That counts." It did. I kept the letter in a box with other fragments of old memories. A movie stub from the night I met Daniel, a dried flower from graduation, a photo strip from a photo booth in sophomore year. That one still had Sam in it. I didn't tear him it either. I let it be what it was. A moment. And in doing so, I let her be what she was. Not a villain. Not a monster. Just a flawed, fragile girl who made a terrible choice. One day, years later, I saw her name pop up on a mutual friend's feed. She was living in a different city now, working a job in event planning. The caption under the photo said something about her organizing a community fundraiser. She looked happy. I didn't feel bitter, or jealous, or even curious. I just hoped she was doing better. We hadn't spoken since the letter, and I didn't expect to. Some stories are meant to end quietly. Mine didn't need a reunion. It needed space. Healing, growth. It needed me to remember who I was before the betrayal, who I'd become after. I had learned how to stand on my own, how to spot the warning signs of manipulation before they took root, how to choose people who didn't just want to stand in my light, but wanted to shine with me. And most importantly, I had learned that even the deepest pain couldn't erase the parts of me that mattered most. My softness, my trust, my capacity to love. Those survived, because they were never hers to destroy. 3 years passed. Not rushed, not erased, just lived. The sharpness of that night at Sam's party, the echo of her words turning my secret into sport, faded into something quieter. Not gone, just dulled, like the scar from a wound long healed. I no longer flinched when someone brought up the Saints. I no longer wondered who knew and who didn't. The shame had lifted, bit by bit, through truth, telling, therapy, and time. And then, just as the seasons began shifting again, when the days felt a little longer and the air a little softer, she found me. Not in person, not online. Through paper, again. A small package arrived at my apartment, wrapped in brown craft paper with my name carefully written on the front. Inside, nestled in tissue, was a small photo album, the kind you could buy at a drugstore. Nothing fancy. Taped inside the cover was a short note. "I know I have no right to ask for your time, but this is yours. Always was." I hesitated, then opened it. It was full of us. Photos I'd forgotten existed, blurry snapshots from school trips, selfies taken while we laughed with soda straws hanging from our mouths, Polaroids of us at the beach, our names written in sand, tiny notes, folded and pasted onto pages, inside jokes scribbled in the margins, a flattened flower from a walk we took sophomore year. And near the back, one photo stood out. It was the two of us at 13, sitting cross-legged in her backyard, holding up books to cover half our faces. Mine said Anne of Green Gables. Hers, A Wrinkle in Time. Our eyes were visible above the covers, young, wide, full of something we didn't yet know how to hold. There was a caption written below it in faded inky. "Two girls against the world." I closed the album slowly, not with anger, not even with sadness, but with peace. She had done something I didn't expect, not tried to rewrite history, not defend herself, but preserve the part that had been real, that had mattered. Before the lies, before the pain, I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Some acts speak for themselves. And this one, it wasn't forgiveness, but it was respect. A final page, a quiet bow. I stored the album in a drawer next to the letter, not because I needed to revisit it, but because it was part of the story. My story. And my story, it turned out, wasn't about a girl who got betrayed. It was about a girl who kept her softness, even when the world told her not to. A girl who learned to choose herself, who healed, not in spite of what she lost, but because of it. And who, in the end, understood something simple and profound. Some people are only meant to walk with you for a while, and when they leave, what you keep is what you build next. These were stories that show the limits of friendship. How love can sour, how trust can splinter, how the people closest to us sometimes do the deepest harm, not because they hate us, but because they haven't learned how to love us well. And yet, from that fracture, we grow. We learn. We build new boundaries, stronger voices, and softer hearts. If you've ever had a best friend break your heart, if you've ever held on too long, or let go too late, share your story in the comments. We want to hear from you. And if this story stayed with you, don't forget to subscribe for more. Until next time.